Hello, it's Mr. Fontaine. Welcome to Enrichment. Today we're going to be doing a lesson on early humans. What were some of the first humans to walk the earth? What did they look like? How did they come about? All in today's lesson. But before we do that, I would like to talk about dinosaurs. So we may have seen the movie The Good Dinosaur. It was a good movie. We may have also seen shows like The Flintstones. And I'm sure we've all seen stuff like Jurassic World or the Jurassic Park series. But I wanted to ask the question, did humans ever exist when there were dinosaurs walking the world? Well, to start, we have to think about dinosaurs. And we know that, dinosaurs, to the best of my knowledge, aren't still walking around the world. So they went extinct at some point, but when was that? Well, dinosaurs actually went extinct 65 million years ago. So that is 6 zeros there. So dinosaurs have been gone for a very long time. But was there ever a point, maybe older than 65 million years, where humans and dinosaurs existed together? Let's see your thoughts. So when do you think early humans first appeared? Did they exist before the dinosaurs? Or did they come a little later? Well, humans, or early humans, first came to be about 3 million years ago. And again, that's still a very long time ago, but it's nowhere close to when the dinosaurs were around. And, so early humans certainly didn't have it easy, but they never had to fight dinosaurs. I think if we had to fight T-Rexes in our evolutionary past, things would have been very different and possibly very bad. So it's a very good thing that humans never had to deal with dinosaurs. So if there weren't dinosaurs, what was the Earth exactly like 3 million years ago? I wonder. Well, let's check it out. So 3 million years ago, our planet was actually full of life. Now, none of that life was dinosaur life, but there were deer, giraffes, hyenas, sheep, goats, horses, elephants, camels, beavers, cave lions, ants, termites, woolly mammoths, saber-toothed tigers, giant sharks, megalodons, dogs with huge teeth, and all kinds of birds and plants and fish. Now, some of these species we might recognize, and other ones are a little different. So here is an artist's picture of what life 3 million years ago might have been like. And again, we're seeing obviously some we recognize, right? I see a bear, I see wolves, I see a goat, I see things that look like horses. Then we also see mammoths, and we see, man, I don't even know what some of those things are. But life was kind of similar, kind of different. But the most important thing about this time was that most of the animals, especially the big animals living on Earth during this time, were mammals. We're mammals that had fur, gave birth to live young. And we're mammals just like humans. And so this is the age when humans first came about. So it was about 3 million years ago. There was an order of animals called the higher primates. And these included 2 species. These were the apes, and these were early man. And so apes are things like gorillas, chimpanzees, orangutans. But at the same time, there was this different group that was developing within the higher primates, and it was early man. So early man initially, as we can probably see from this little photo, were quite a bit like the apes that they were living alongside. So what exactly were the differences? Well, there were 2 main differences. The first difference is that early man could stand upright on 2 legs. Apes could not. And if you've ever seen a gorilla move around, kind of, with its hands on the ground, early humans didn't need to do that, and they could just walk around. So that's difference number 1. Difference number 2, their hands were very different looking. So ape hands were made for climbing and hanging, whereas early man's hands were jointed a little differently, which made them able to make and use tools. So what I want to do is pause us here, and I want to give us some time to look at these 2 hands. The ape hand is on the left, and the human hand is on the right. What are some of the big differences we notice? Okay, thank you for all of your answers. So the two that I wanted to point out, and I think a lot of us got these, the first one is that the ape hand is a lot longer. Look at the length of the palm and those fingers. And that was mainly because a really long hand with long fingers was great for grabbing at branches to swing in trees. Another difference was look at the thumbs. So early humans already had thumbs that were far longer and far stronger and far bigger. And that's really useful if you want to be grabbing things. You're doing like very, very specific things, manipulating things with your hands, like making tools, like using those tools, like holding a pencil, like using a spoon to eat. So all of those things were made more possible by how our hands changed, specifically with the thumb. Okay, so I've mentioned that early humans lived about 3 million years ago, but how do we know that? Right? Are you just going to listen to me? No, how do we know that? And the answer is that Lucy told them. Lucy, who's Lucy? Well, Lucy was a skeleton that was found in Africa. Now, Lucy was a very, very early human, the first early human to have ever been found. Now, Lucy was about 20 or so years when she died, and scientists named her Lucy. I don't know what her name was at the time, but that's the thing with scientists. If they discover things, they kind of just get to name them whatever they want. So she's Lucy. And they estimated that when Lucy was alive, she was about 4 feet tall. So you guys should all be taller than Lucy, and Lucy is a full-grown adult. So early humans are very small. And she only weighed about 50 pounds. Scientists even found out just from the bones that she probably fell into a lake and river and drowned. So that's upsetting, but I guess it was 3 million years ago, so maybe not that upsetting. But scientists were able to work all of this stuff out just from looking at the bones. And so they can tell a lot from a skeleton. So I want us to look at this picture now of Lucy, which was recreated. No one was there to take it 3 million years ago. But I want you to answer the question, does Lucy look more like a human or more like an ape to you? And why? Okay, thank you for all of your answers. And I would agree with many of you that Lucy definitely does look very, very apish. But that's about to change because humans then started to evolve. So the first evolution of early humans was a species called Homo habilis. Scientists also called them the handyman species. Now, these early human-like species were a bit taller and a bit smarter than Lucy's people. So Lucy was only 4 feet tall. Homo habilis generally hit 5 feet, so they were a little bigger. And they were a little smarter too. If you look at the head shape, there's definitely more room in there for a brain rather than a really, really big jaw. But again, they weren't that smart. So for instance, they did not know how to make fire. And fire is important for a number of things, which we'll talk about later. But they did know how to use fire. So if they saw something burning, they probably knew how to carry some of those branches back to start a campfire. But if their branches went out, they kind of just had nothing to do. So that was Homo habilis. Homo habilis then evolved, and we saw a new species of human. And these were Homo erectus. Now, scientists also nicknamed Homo erectus upright man because erectus means standing up straight, or to be erect means to stand up straight. So this group of man was very, very different and was a little bit smarter than Homo habilis. Homo erectus did know how to make fire on their own, probably by using flintstone and just hitting stones together, or by using branches and just kind of rubbing them. That was game changing. So people then, once they knew how to make their fire, began to cook their food. And cooking food is very important. It helped to reduce disease, right? You'd get sick if you ate raw food. Old humans did too. So it reduced disease massively. And it also made food more easy to digest. So this was a really, really big thing. And these people would gather around fires at night, share stories, and they really came together in little cave-dwelling communities. So Homo erectus is already starting to look a little bit more like the modern humans we see today, but not quite. Now, another thing about Homo erectus was that they were very good at making tools. They made weapons, they made tools, and some of their weapons included axes, knives. They knew how to cut things. And because they were able to make fire, they didn't just have to stay around like wherever they were. They could move to far colder places, and because they knew how to make fires, they didn't have to worry about freezing or being too cold. Since they also knew how to make knives, they also learned how to make warm clothes from animal skins. So Homo erectus was probably the first species that developed an ability to live in colder places. And that was what took them around the world. Because if you remember, very early humans started off in Africa. So it was about 1 million years ago from now, Homo erectus began to slowly leave Africa and populate the world. Now you might be thinking, how exactly did they do that? Right? The world looks like this, and they're down here in Africa. How on earth did they get to places like Australia, places like all of the Americas, which are across an entire ocean? How was that even possible? They didn't have planes. They didn't have boats. So what exactly went on? Well, have any of you guys seen this movie, Ice Age? So the movie has a little bit of truth to it. The truth isn't that the animals are talking, and the plot is a little off, but the Ice Age, where the movie takes place, was a real thing, where for a long period of time, the Earth was a lot colder than it is today. One of the results of this was that a lot of water that normally would have been liquid froze over. So this is what the map looked like during the Ice Age. And one thing that you could definitely notice is that it is now possible to walk from Europe all the way over to North America. And that is exactly what Homo erectus did. So Homo erectus began to spread out of Africa around the world. Okay, so Homo erectus are now around the world. They've gone totally global. But we didn't stop there, because this is still a little different from how modern humans look today, right? You can still see that the jaw is a lot bigger. And we need to make some space for that brain. So what exactly happened to get us from Homo erectus to what we are today? Well, one really interesting thing happened. Homo erectus actually split into two different species of Homo sapiens. The first, Homo sapien neanderthals, and the second, Homo sapien sapiens. Yes, a very silly name, but that is the one that we are. But let's have a look first at Homo sapien neanderthals. So when scientists first discovered Neanderthals, they saw this skeleton, and this skeleton was really weird looking. It had bent knees. It was kind of like all on fours, like really like slanted necks. And people were thinking, oh my goodness, like these Neanderthals must have been real stupid if they're just walking around on all fours like that. Are these really our ancestors? So people were really confused. And scientists for a long time thought Neanderthals, again, didn't have much in here. But scientists were actually wrong. They'd made a mistake. And that's a really cool thing about science. Science is just getting us closer and closer to the right answer, but we make mistakes all the time. And the mistake they made was that they assumed that all Neanderthals were like this skeleton that they found. And it turns out the skeleton wasn't a normal skeleton at all. It was a Neanderthal, a really old one, who was suffering from arthritis, which is a disease that bends and kind of cripples your bones. So that's why he was like that. So they actually just dug up a really old man Neanderthal, and they thought all of them were like that. But that's not true. Neanderthals were, different from Homo sapiens sapiens, like we are today, but not that different, right? And, for me, if I were to see this guy walking around, obviously like not wearing those clothes, but if I were to see him walking around, I probably wouldn't even like bat an eye. So they were very similar to modern humans, like the humans today. They were tall, they were smart, and they also lived in caves. And they were great, great hunters. So considering how smart they were and how advanced they were for their time, scientists have always been confused at why Neanderthals, rather than Homo sapiens sapiens, why Homo sapiens Neanderthals were the ones to die out rather than us. Like they seem pretty formidable. They seem pretty good. And so like, why did this happen? It's a history mystery. Scientists are still arguing. Now, if you're in Mr. Fontaine's class now, I'll give you a conspiracy theory. But if you're in the other classes, let's move on. Okay, so again, there are two branches that Homo erectus evolved into. The second one are what we know today as Homo sapiens, because Homo sapiens Neanderthals died out. But the technical name for our species, for us, modern humans, is Homo sapien sapiens, which is probably the silliest thing I've ever seen. Scientists, get your act together. But yeah, Homo sapien sapiens. And early Homo sapien sapiens were nicknamed the Cro-Magnon man, which is French for cave dwellers. And these species evolved in Europe. So again, remember, Homo erectus like traveled out from Africa, and then Homo sapiens sapiens evolved in Europe. So this group was very lucky because they didn't have to live a life of constant struggle for survival. And why was that? It was because they were very, very good at working together as a group to provide for food. So how were they good at this? How are they smart? How did they do this? So one thing that they learned to do was to cure and store food for the long winter. So curing food is doing stuff to it to make it last longer. Like you could think of maybe drying food out or adding salt or doing lots of things. And they worked out how to take food that they got when there was lots of food around, like during the spring, right? During the fall, during the summer, and store it for the winter so they never really ran out of food. Smart. They also learned how to use traps, which allowed them to catch foods while they were busy doing something else. Also really smart, right? Catching food without even having to think about it. And again, the photo here is a bit, or the illustration here is a bit silly with a mouse trap, but I think more like, digging a big hole, waiting for something to fall into it. So really smart. And they also learned how to make nets from vines and fish hooks. Those are pretty complicated to catch fish. So clearly, like modern humans, Homo sapiens sapiens really had something going for them. They built rafts and canoes to go out to sea to catch fish in deeper waters. They even made like pretty advanced clothing and jewelry. And they invented the bow and arrow, so you don't have to go up and stab something anymore. You can just pop it off. So Homo sapiens sapiens were really going places. And one thing that Homo sapiens did as well, or Homo sapiens sapiens did, as well as being obviously very smart, was they really took to art. And they were the only known species of humans. So all the other species of humans we talked about, even the ones that lived in caves, they'd never paint on the walls, or at least we've never seen it before. But Homo sapiens sapiens did it quite a bit. And they would go and they would draw paintings deep inside the walls of really dark caves. Now, these paintings kind of went like generation by generation, and people would keep on adding to these paintings like, year by year. And over time, a cave might have hundreds of paintings. So this was really interesting. No other species of human ever did this. They drew animals, they drew hunters, they drew stencils of hands. And, this was really confusing to scientists because these paintings were drawn at the very deepest part of caves. And if you're thinking, we didn't just have a flashlight back then. If you were to draw these things, you would have had to hold some fire in your hand, probably some sort of a torch, and then crawl all the way back into a cave just to do that art all the time, like while carrying like prepped paints that you're gonna like use. So, it's kind of baffling that humans did this. And this is, again, something that scientists just look at and go like, we're not totally sure, but this did happen. And again, it is a mystery. Especially because if you crawl into a cave, You might run into a dangerous animal. You might fall into a hole and die, but humans kept doing this. They kept painting like deep in the walls of caves. And actually, like how we found this out, it was in a place called Le Sceaux, France. And these kids were playing in the woods, and they just found these caves that were hidden by little trees, bushes, roots, and inside they look like this. Pretty spectacular. And these were all done by really early modern humans. So, to recap, humans and dinosaurs never coexisted. Coexisting just means existing at the same time. Never happened. Humans were different from apes because they walked on two legs. Apes did not. And they had different hands. Look at these thumbs. Early humans were small, with pretty small brains and pretty big jaws, right? Looking a lot more like apes. But as we evolved, our jaws got smaller and smaller, and our brains got larger and larger. And we also got larger too. Our final recap slide. Humans, specifically Homo erectus, traveled the world during the Ice Age. So if the world didn't freeze over like that, maybe we wouldn't be so widespread. And finally, there are two species of Homo sapiens, right? We had the Neanderthals, and we had Homo sapiens sapiens. And Neanderthals died out. Homo sapiens sapiens, they led to modern humans like us. So that is the second to last point. And the last point is that us, Homo sapiens sapiens, modern humans, we were smart. We really knew how to use tools. We worked together really well. And we were somehow weirdly obsessed with art. So this has been your intro to early modern humans.